truth, once grasped, tears the comfortable paint from the walls of illusion. You cannot unsee the little season. You can no longer return to what once was. My account, recorded and shared in an age far beyond 1893. A man works tirelessly to tell the same story I lived. My account, recorded and shared in an age far beyond 1893. He assembles moving pictures and sound far beyond anything I could imagine to carry the warning forward. The little season continues, but so does the testimony.
Man, I love this guy, Jason with Humanly Curious. He did that series on the little season with Jason Jack. So cool. And he always says, though, I have this thought. He always says he's fighting against AI. He's a real dude. But wait a second, it seems like he's using AI. Then I noticed, whoa, he's kind of showing us he's doing the work behind the scenes. He's actually artworking these episodes out. And, I thought I'll reach out to him, connect with him. I had connected with him early on when he first got going on his channel. Thought it was so cool. Well, guess what, baby? We have the man himself in the house, Jason with Humanly Curious. In the description below, he's got 2 channels. Make sure you subscribe to both of them. How are you doing, man?
Hey, Grady. Hey, thanks a lot for having me, man. Yeah, you've been a fan of the channel, from the very beginning. And I remember back in like LS2 or 3, you'd reached out to me. To be honest, I was still trying to figure out what I was doing and how to do all of to present everything. I've gotten the time, and I didn't forget. I didn't forget people. Integrity is very important to me. And so I remember that, and reached out. Barb actually reminded me, and I said, absolutely. Just a little backstory on that. Crypto Grady, she had told me, reminded me who it was, just between, me and you and now everyone who's going to watch this. I looked at her and I said, no, I'm not interested. And it was based off the name. Then she watched a podcast with you and I believe the Rev, and Trisha's husband was on there.
Scott Clark.
Scott Clark.
I love it. Yeah.
And with whom I'll be meeting soon at our meet and greet that we have scheduled coming up at the end of the month. So I'm looking forward to that very much.
In Arizona, meet and greet.
Phoenix, Arizona. There's a post on our community post with where it's going to be at. So we're going to provide hamburgers, hot dogs, chips, drinks. If you want to RSVP, that would be great. That just help us to make sure we have enough food. But yeah, I look forward to meeting everyone then. So my wife told me, Barb told me, she's like, he had a good testimony. He sounds like a really good guy. And that's all I needed to hear from Barb. And I said, okay, all right, then I'll remember. So she reminded me, we just finished the trilogy of what you started the episode off with, the little season trivium. I wanted to tie it to the ancient Greek school of learning, the trivium. There might be a quadrivium coming up in the future. There'll be more on that later, because we do have a H.G. Wells that happens to be a Christian now, and he has a time machine. So anything's possible there. And so you started it off with that. And so I got that production out and just finished the Flanet Isles, which has always been an interesting story to me. I'd heard many YouTubers present this story, and I always felt that it was never done accurately. A lot of sensationalism, a lot of embellishment and everything. Not only I wanted to do it right, but I wanted to do it in a humanly curious way. Presented it with multiple alternate endings. If someone wants to skip to one of the lore-based endings that went down in the records and stuff, they can, or you can watch it all the way through. So I actually had some time, and we connected and everything, and I'm glad that you have me on.
Yeah, man, I watched that trilogy 5 times. I watched at least the last episode 5 or 6 times. I watched the whole thing through like 3 times. It even brought me to tears. I loved it. And hey, so I'm glad you brought up the Crypto Grady, because I'm still praying about what to change my name to. I'm thinking maybe the time is short. Like maybe
I like it.
Some urgency that's been on me here lately about that. We're going to talk testimonies, talk about, it's like you have a vision and a calling for this channel. You have your own way of wanting to do it. And it's like, man, you're like a man on a mission, working hard. You're the one doing it's not AI, all this like a lot of people have accused you of. Now you use some AI, but it's more you're doing the graphics art. You have a computer software engineer degree or something.
Yes. Yeah. And exactly. And I'm just a regular guy, not AI. And so that's been my statement since day one, fighting back against the robot takeover of YouTube. What that stemmed from was, I guess, my genesis moment of wanting to create a YouTube channel in the first place. And the first reason was for my grandkids. So they'd be able to grow up and be able to brag to their friends, and nudge them and say, that's my papaw, when I'm no longer around. That was one reason. 2, I was laid off from my job as, a computer systems network engineer that I was on a program for 6 years for. My company is headquartered back in Boston. They had relocated me out to Arizona back in 2020, afforded me to come back east to Boston, which I had no desire to do. I had already put down permanent roots here in Arizona. 20 years in the military, and then I'd worked pretty much the whole time. Since then, they gave me a severance. I took some time off, and it was a couple weeks into it that I'm like, babe, I'm going to start a YouTube channel. Yeah. Luckily, I have a wife that supports me and has my back no matter what I do. So after the shock wore off and she saw that I was actually serious a few days into it. And so as I began my YouTube channel, the third reason, was the AI. I've listened to YouTube. I've loved YouTube since 2004 or 5 when it came out, and I've seen it evolve, throughout the years. And in the last year, it was just, I'd click on stuff and you're just seeing all these names pop up out of the blue, and you click on it and it's random AI generated images with an AI voice that's talking to you, that's repetitive. It just keeps repeating and rephrasing things, and it can't even say the year 2025 right. It says it weird. I was like, this is crap. Is this what YouTube is going to become? Is this what it's going to boil down to? I like seeing someone's face on camera. And even now, bro, like there's now people cloning themselves and putting their clone up there. And you can barely tell that. I watched a video on it like last week, and it's unbelievable. Yes. Do I use AI? Absolutely. Will you find a creator operating at my level or higher that is not implementing or integrating AI in some way, form, or fashion? I doubt so. And I believe that there's no escaping it, but I use it as a tool. It's a means to an end. You will always see my face on camera. Okay, whether I put like an 8mm layer like I did on the little season trivium to just try to age myself a little bit, and the mustache, which we can talk about. That wasn't my plan, Barb. bought me one before I even knew, before
Love
I even
it.
did my first on camera, and said, "Babe, you're wearing this." Right. And my voice is my voice, and it's the voice that you hear right now, raw, going through a DJI Mic 2 wireless microphone. And it minus equalization, of course. I doubt my viewers would like to hear my voice like I'm in the bathroom delivering the production. Equalization, that's it. And then right, the AI tools, and then they have limitations, at least for my standard, maintaining character lock. And Grady, you gave a good example there as the three guys were walking down the pier, Marshall, Ducat, and MacArthur from the Flan and Isles production I just did, where I blended in their original photograph of those three guys, right? And I do that throughout. And it's just another way, I believe, to show the depth of realism that I'm going to go. Should I use AI to be able to bring about and generate scenes that happened so long ago that obviously there's no footage that you can find on the internet to make the story more immersive? Then that's what I do. But AI even has its limitations. And the other part that you showed at the end of that, and that's why I do show my work, where he's behind the window writing his notes. You can't put a prompt in, and an AI is going to generate that for you. The window pane and the door frame, the wooden frames of the window, and him behind it, it'll come out morphed and all wacky looking. If I want to convey and present a scene, I cut it all out. That was like 6 layers deep of graphics and positioning and everything, so I could just present that one scene. So yeah, so that's to address the AI. And it's amazing that even with that aside, how often I've been accused of just me myself being AI, that they refuse to believe. Yeah, that sounds exactly like something AI would say to me. I mean, look, man, you can't win them all. And I think the only answer to that is how you're hearing me speak in free flow here right now is one thing. When I'm trying to present a production, I have a limited amount of time to try to say as much as I can and make it make sense and not let my ADHD kick in. So I script it. I script it so that way I can convey the most direct amount of information, right? So I can keep the narrative going. I can keep the story flowing, and that requires a script. Well, my memory sucks. I can memorize I can memorize maybe a line at a time, man. Sometimes 3 or 4 words, depending on what I wrote and how I worded it and how intricate and complex it is. Those are cuts. I try my best, and that's something I need to improve in still. I know that. But I try my best to, okay, say what I'm going to say, maintain my head position, don't move, don't twitch nothing, look over, all right, at my left screen and be like, and then that was the last they ever heard of him. And so I tilted my head, right? And if people knew that that's what you have to do. And I think people see that max headroom. If you're Gen X, you know who I'm talking about. Effect sometimes in me. They think that's AI, I guess. And really, it's just I suck at being on camera. And I think part of it is that's the hardest thing I have to do. I do not like going on camera. Right. All the
That's
graphics
crazy because you're so good at it, man.
but I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't. I'm nervous. I get nervous. 2 things make me nervous since I've become a YouTuber and build up the most anxiety. And that's when I have to go on camera as a part of my production, whether it's the midpoint check-in or whatever, and when we premiere. Like those 2 things, like my anxiety is like I'm bugging out. That's the hardest part. The VFX and the musical scoring that I try to create when I create the music. It's all about immersing you and deep into a story, and I'm going after all your senses when I'm telling you these stories. The music does its part too, to try to carry you away, right, and suspend disbelief, if you will, for a few moments while I take you on a journey. And that's all has its own work, right, and effort. But yeah, being on camera is the hardest part for me. So yeah, I think that's probably why.
Man, you got a gift. You've got a vision for this. You want it done a certain way. You're really particular with all the details. What was it that drove you to be like, man, I want it to be this a certain way. I want it to, it's like a movie. You're trying to create sort of like a cinematic
Right.
experience. Yeah. With it.
Yeah, I am. You know, and what that was. Okay, so I started a YouTube channel. Again, me having been, like I said, watched YouTube since the mid 2000s, right? I have my channels of creators in my niche that I chose to get in, which histories, mysteries that I do now, and they're big channels. I won't mention any names here. You know of them. They're great channels. They're great at what they do. They wouldn't be where they're at if they were not. But I always felt on each one, and there's probably like maybe 4 or 5, that they could be legend if they only did this. So I had criticisms of each one. You know, do I still watch them now? Of course. One of them started wearing makeup. That's all I'm going to say about that. And you'll never see me. And that's my promise to you right here, right now. And I'll eat crow if in front of you, if that ever changes. I will never have makeup prior to going on camera, no matter how big I ever get. But anyway, I had criticisms, you know, of each one. And so it was like, okay, you know what? Who was I to tell them anything? I was nobody. And so I was just a viewer. And so I just took those criticisms and was like, okay, well, this is what I'll do different. You know, I'd always couch quarterback, right? And have criticisms that I'd say, yeah, look, you know, all right, let me shut up and do it myself. And so that's what I did. And I thought of a 3 on camera format. Again, I suck at being on camera. So you trust me, you don't me try to deliver you an entire story as a talking head. I would have no subscribers.
I think it's hilarious. I love it when you come on and you tell your little dry jokes, your dry humor. I love it.
You know, well, the dry humor, I started out right, you know, on my earlier episodes that I know you've seen, that my voice is so dry that even an old rusty gate would scream uncle. You know, yeah, I would clown my voice because I just, you know, how you hear yourself
Yeah.
versus how others hear you, I guess, kind of thing, you know. And I believe after I started getting enough comments, you know, as I was gaining subscribers that were telling me like, dude, knock it off already, you know, you got a great voice, right? And all this stuff. Yeah, you can see me evolve and progress in throughout my channel. But yeah, I am a clown. Yeah, I like to have fun, a little fun with the videos, and it depends on the topic. The Flan and Isles, I mean, alternate endings, and I say it at the end of my outro about UFOs and sirens, right, lulling the men out. I even thought of a big giant crab, you know, that come across, you know, and just get wild with it. But there's restraint. Luckily, for that 8-year-old that lives inside me, the adult takes over a lot of times. But yeah, I like to have fun with some of the episodes. I do like foreshadowing events, and I like dropping Easter eggs, if you will, and some of my work that I'll never say if people will find them or they won't. So yeah, I like getting in depth and the whole cinematic approach. Again, I wanted to come on and at least in my mind and from those that are immediately around me, I am doing something that really nobody else is doing on YouTube. And not only that, but as Grady had said at the beginning of the production with HC Studios, right? Every major production gets its own soundtrack or an official music video released with it. In the event someone enjoys the music, they can go to HC Studios, of which my promise has been it'll never be behind a paywall. No, those songs are yours, and the music video is yours to watch. If you enjoyed the music. So that's just that extra above and beyond that I like to go.
And you actually make that music yourself, right? With your son-in-law, is it?
Yeah. My son-in-law does all the lyrics and musical composition. He runs it through AI. We do run it through AI, but he'll take the different pieces because it'll spit out an entire one. And he makes it right. It might not be to his liking, and so he'll cut it in half. And so he does all that assembly down on his end. These are not props behind me. I do play them, and I did surprise I think if more than one person, more than a few, when I'd recently gotten around to laying down some of my own original tracks. Prior to on some of our songs, I supplied the riff for, but that was behind the scenes. And over
Yeah.
Christmas, since everything's kind of slow, I found myself with little time because I had the Trivium trilogy. I had it wrapped up and had a 2 week buffer. It was already done by the time the second one premiered. That was already done, and I had some time, and so I had some originals that, you know what, I wanted to bring to life and everything. So yeah, I jammed and everything, and did a couple songs, and actually integrated my playing into the music videos that are on HC Studios. One's just called Humanly Curious, and it's a silly song, but it jams. Right. And then The Threshold of Heaven was a song I had written when I was back 16 years old, back in like 1986, and everything, that I finally laid all the rhythm for that's on there. So, and put that together. So yeah, so we do all the music and everything that we
I
then
love it.
create.
Like even
Yeah.
the guitar, like on part 3 of 3 of the Trivium, like the
Um,
guitar there that was going. Was that you?
yeah.
Man,
Yeah.
wow.
Oh, at the end of that. Yeah, the riff. Yeah, the riff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
I
riff.
loved
Yeah.
it.
Not the hymn. Yeah. Yeah, the
Uh-huh. Right.
hymn, apparently, right. I asked my son about it. It was, he was inspired by Come Thy Fount,
Oh, yeah.
is
Yeah,
a
yeah.
popular hymn,
Yep.
and we titled it Come Thy Mercy,
Uh-huh.
and everything. So that's the song he was inspired by, though, that where he came up with that particular arrangement. And I loved it. I think it fit. You know, back to when I was saying creating that immersive experience, it brought a tear to my eye too.
Right.
I'll sit here and watch them and proof them with Barb when I go through my quality assurance process before I, go to the next step. I run it through multiple QA. I'll sit here and be watching it with her, making sure all my transitions are good and whatnot. Man, yeah, it'll bring a tear. It brought a tear to my eye too.
It
So
is because like you really draw out the sobering, it's a sobering thing as this guy's getting revelation really on
yeah,
that we're
yeah,
in the little season, man. And
yeah,
so I'm big
yeah,
here on this channel talking new covenant brokenness, where we get
yeah,
broken and humble under the mighty hand of God. We humble ourselves like a child and cry out to him every
yeah,
single day for this Holy Spirit to live in us. And that it's so important to have the brokenness where we no longer live, but Christ lives in us, instead
yeah,
of the old
yeah.
covenant where we go back and try harder, do better. We try
Right,
our best to try and follow God and try to get an attaboy from God. Well done, my
right,
good and faithful servant, as if we can do anything to ever please God within ourselves. No, it says we can do nothing apart from him. He's the vine, we're the
yeah,
branch. Apart from him, we can do nothing. And you really draw out this
right,
sober, like, oh, the hard hitting is there's a brokenness there. And
yeah,
also you shared that in your testimony, how you've
mhm,
been through a lot of breaking. I would
yeah,
love to hear more of that.
yeah. Yeah, well, with Wells, real quick, right?
Mhm.
And for anyone that didn't, the interlude part of episode 3 of the Trivium, right, where he's going through that final wormhole, was where I'm not saying anything, but that's actually speaking volumes because it's him going through the 5 phases of grief, which I call the 5 phases of awakening. And any of us who've been on search for the truth that ended up at Jesus Christ, ultimately at the end of everything, and you realize you can no longer look back upon the world with the same rose-colored lens glasses that you had before. You go through those phases, right, of anger, despair, sadness,
Yes.
negotiate, bargaining, right, until you finally get to acceptance. All of those emotions play out in him, and that's what's happening. He's experiencing that right there. And
Mhm.
that's all part of his journey, having been broken down to
Yeah.
his bare essentials to humility.
Yeah.
And I end it with him going to church because,
It's so
right,
good.
he finally found the one that cannot be measured. Right. The little season was the vehicle for the movie, but it was really about H.G. Wells. And being that it was about H.G. Wells, I made it all about us.
Right.
H.G. Wells is us. It was in the little season lens though. So it was, yeah, it was pretty complex. That was pretty complex. And as far as me, right, the Lord had broke me down. I retired from the military in June 2009 after 20 years active duty as a Navy chief. I'd put my papers in 18 months before, and 18 months before was mid 2007. The economy everyone was buying homes. Everything was great. I had as a Navy chief, I had to go through Congress because the Navy monitors how many chiefs, senior chiefs, master chiefs that it has at the senior enlisted level. it got approved. Once it gets approved, I can't change that date. I'm out. The effects of the collapse of 2008 was still being felt, and I could not launch my career. I mean, I had my degree. I had a top secret SCI clearance that I had held for over a decade. I thought I had all my ducks in a row, and these companies were not hiring, or they were wanting seasoned veterans that have already worked for in the industry, and I was just coming out of the military. So I lost everything, and my cars were repossessed, and all that stuff. I know we spoke yesterday, and there was a little further back than that, you know, about God knowing us before we were even ever born.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
he knows us before we're even born, and he knows that he has a plan for us. Yeah, and I believe he'll step in. He'll step in at times that that plan is at risk of being permanently deviated from. We'll just, I guess I could say that. So right, so I lost everything. It was trying to get my career going, and through my life, you know, I dabbled in my testimony video, a chilling true story that's on the Humanly Curious
Yep.
video I'd done a few months ago. It dabs into the spiritual warfare attack that I had ultimately came under after I had called out to Jesus to come into my life and save me. And that was probably like 6 months after I had first said that. So that's on there. He broke me down. Barb moved in with her family in San Diego. A buddy of mine in Tucson, an old Navy buddy, took me in and everything, and you know, gave me a room in his house there. And so I was living there trying to get my career. I didn't have a $5 bill that you could fold in half and rub together. Yeah, and I had an experience there, you know. That's where I called out to Jesus for the first time, because having dabbled in a new age in 2006, 2007, and I was just searching. I was searching. Barb and I both were searching, you know. I finally realized that, you know, you search long enough, you're going to arrive at Jesus. He was the one who answered. And I'm stubborn. I mean, it ain't like you call it to Jesus, you know, he may or may not. I don't know. But with me, it was a 6 month process. It ain't like the next day was all rainbows and sunshine. Because I then firmly believe that the Holy Spirit will not inherit or take reside in an unclean host, right? So you can call out to him, but until you've been purged and repented, and you're not just going to turn your back on Jesus after he bails you out that first time, kind of thing, right? You're tested. Man, was I tested. I was standing in a hotel room one time in MacDill, outside MacDill Air Force Base in Florida. I had gotten a job down there that I went for. Yeah, and I remember standing at a hotel, and the world was against me still. And this was like a month later, and I'm like, and I'm
Okay.
talking to the Lord. I've never been trained in this. I've never been in church before, and I'm standing there by myself, and I look up at the ceiling, and the world is just against me. And I just start laughing. You know, when so much happens to you and you just nothing that you can do but you just laugh. You tried everything you could to avoid the situation that you find yourself in, and you just got to laugh, man. And that's what I was doing. And I look up at the ceiling, and I'm like, but you know what, Lord? One thing, if you know me, I'm stubborn. So
Mhm.
I'm not throwing in the towel yet. You're still stuck with me. You know, and so I kept my faith in him. I did not say you failed me. He had to break me down to show me humility, you know, because I had believed in myself prior to that, you know, like dabbled in new age stuff, but in deep inside, I was the master of my domain, and the decisions that I made and I made alone would be deterministic of the kind of outcome I would have in the future. That's who I was, you know, um, and everything. And so I surrendered fully to him, and he's been in the driver's seat ever since. But yeah, that's kind of been my walk.
That's awesome. And then you said you were a preterist, and then
Yeah,
your son-in-law told you about the little season, and Jason
yeah.
Jack, who just put a video out, by the way. I'm gonna check that out later
Okay.
on, I think.
Right on.
So how did you become preterist
Yeah.
first, which is so interesting? And then
Uh-huh.
how did you become, convinced of the little season?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Grady.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that kind of coincides back to my YouTube channel, and I forgot that part. So I'm really glad you brought that up. Right, I thought about doing the YouTube channel, but what's going to be my topic? What am I going to do? Right, what even am I going to do? It was probably like a few days before I decided to sit down and make my first video, which is very rough, by the way. People like it though. That,
I
that
love it.
blows my mind. It blows my mind. Yeah, I was so not knowing what I'm looking at the screen like this, reading and stuff. Yeah, I've come a long way. And so, but we're setting out back, and it was my son, and my wife, and Barb and myself. I can kind of hear them talking, and they were talking about little season. My son, Mike, was like, brought it up to his mom, talking about the tribulation had already happened. And it wasn't until they were probably like a minute or two into the conversation that I'm like piecing it together. And I'm like, I turn and I look at him like, what are you going on about? They explained to me, right, about he saw this Jason Jack. He's like, you got to check out Jason Jack. And so he dropped it all on me, right?
Right.
And I scoffed. I'm like, yeah, okay, right. All right. Rabbit hole. I've been, now for the record, I've been awake. I go back to like the Rob Skiba days. I've been awake since 2010.
Okay, like
Barb and I,
yeah, okay.
Right, exactly. So no, I'm not new to this. I've been down every rabbit hole you can think of, but I had never heard of Little Season before. So he dropped it on me, and I was just like, yeah, okay, man, whatever, right? And that was that. And then as like the 24 hours goes by and 48 hours goes by, and I'm in the shower, and and it's just bouncing around in my head still, right? And I'm like, and I'm thinking to myself, and I'm like, is it plausible? It takes nothing away from the words of Jesus. It doesn't take anything away from scripture, right? Because you always base everything off scripture first. People could tell you all kinds of stuff. Well, what's the Bible say? And it changed the timeline. The timeline. At some point, scripturally, someone's going to be in Revelation 20.
That's right.
At some point. Is that us? Right?
Yeah,
right. We could be that. I start looking into it, and I watched some of Jason Jack's videos and everything, and it blew my mind, man. I got really fascinated in it. So I'm like, there's my first video. I'm gonna critique, right, and basically phrase it as a question. Are we in Satan's little season? And in that video, I give credit to Jason Jack in it and everything. I always do. The Nephilim clowns, Paul Stobbs. I covered his. I read his book, and that was fascinating. I like fascinating stuff. I credited to him, and he actually thanked me for covering his work. Yeah, so my first video, I actually two dropped on the same day. It was that one. It was Jason Jack Little Season, and my biggest takeaway from the research that I had done on that was the time. That was my biggest one. Was like, okay, I get it. Right. All of it discourse. Jesus is talking to first century Jews that are standing before him right then, right there. Surely, none of your generation will pass away until you see the returning of the Son of Man. Right. He's telling them, right. And that's just one example. Right?
That's just one example. And he quoted Daniel, who God told Daniel to seal up the words of this prophecy because the time is many years in the future. Then Jesus quotes Daniel and a whole bunch of things. This generation will not pass away. Then Jesus tells John in Revelation chapter 22, do not seal up the words of this prophecy, for the time is at hand. The time is short. The time is now. It's like,
I'm not going to dip and see you in 2,000 years.
Yeah. Right.
Right.
Why would he tell Daniel to seal up the words of the prophecy 500 years out if he says do not seal up the words when it's 2,000 years later? Never made sense to me ever.
Right. And that was that was what, like, I was kind of sold, man. Like, I was like, this makes sense. And just the one thing, man, I had one thing, and it was the time that was blowing my mind. I mean, because I'm seeing TikTok videos, and YouTube. TikTok is where I got my start, by the way. That's what I got into video editing and stuff. And I had almost 10,000 followers before TikTok permanently banned me. It was really, that's another story. It was related to election stuff because it was the political season, and I couldn't help myself but make fun of the whole process. And it was very sensitive at the time, and TikTok wasn't having it. I had millions of views and everything, but yeah, back to that. It was the time. And so I had done 2 videos, right? And I had both of them done. The first one I did was Little Season. And then I did the Phantom Time hypothesis based off of Herbert Illig's research. Because when I came off of what I learned about my brief amount of what I knew at the time, a little season, the time was the biggest question that I had. So then I went down the time rabbit hole, and I didn't
The
upload little.
timeline, like the hidden years, the
Yeah,
fake
you hear
history.
some
Yeah.
people say we're really in the year 1768 or something. You
Or
hear that
13,
thing.
yeah, 13 something. Yeah.
I've heard that one. So right. And I know why people do that. I know why people say that. And they say that, and we get different times like that because you do have to interpret the time that had been hidden. Everything from Herbert Illig to Anatoly Fomenko
Mhm.
to Gunnar Heinsohn,
Yeah.
all three independent researchers dealing with independent different things. Heinsohn with the stratigraphy of the Earth, the layers and
Mhm.
everything, and Herbert Illig was with just more of the time insertion, time manipulation that was added to the calendar. Some of which I covered, and the trilogy with the Anno Domini at the year 1000, that was with the Catholic Church, Pope Sylvester II, and Otto III, the Roman Emperor at the time, Otto III. Anyone can take that time and those bouts of time and make that fit to serve if they want it. Well, the real year is 13 something because okay, it was 300 years here, 700 years there, and so that's still like oh, I believe the time was manipulated. Can I put my finger on exactly how and get it narrowed down to plus or minus 50 years, whatever? No, I can't.
Yeah, I
I'm
don't
not
know.
saying it's yeah,
Andy with Tartarian Biblical Research has some
yeah,
really interesting takes, but even with that, it's like I'm like, Andy, how can you even know, like, the 1800s and even early 1900s are super sketch. Like, it seems
right,
like a lot of that history is fake, let alone the
exactly,
1700s, 1600s, like, but
right.
it's
And you're getting that
interesting.
close to our current time, right? And
Oh,
and and, and you're right? Like some of
yeah,
those buildings, I mean, the addresses on them or whatever, right?
right.
And it's like, and it seems like that would be in at least our historical record. I mean, it
Yeah,
wasn't that long ago. And but for them to do it and get away with like the World's Fair stuff, even,
right.
it's
Super weird.
diabolical. That's diabolical, dude.
I
That
love
is
how you
just
started out the trivium with
mm.
the World's Fair. Is that guy a real historical guy, or was it all kind of like made him up and his
I
diary and all
mean,
that?
that was all in my head.
Oh,
That was
that's
all it was all imagination. That's my
okay.
imagination. Yeah,
I
it was
love
a
it.
play on, H.G. Wells, obviously,
Okay.
H.C. Humanly Curious Wells,
Oh,
um, my detective in my film noir Eisenhower video was J.H. Curious, and that's just humanly curious. So his first name's Just. The Easter egg, I never said what his first name was, just that's his initials, but that's what it stands for. But yeah, Wells, The Time Machine was a mashup of the 1950s H.G. Wells Time Machine, and then the movie, I believe it was 1978, Once Upon a Time, that had Malcolm McDowell in it, Time Machine. And
yeah,
so
yeah,
I,
yeah.
I
Okay.
I took them and I composited them, I ripped them apart and everything, and made the time machine that we ended up going with. But
That's fun.
yeah, I wanted to tell the story, and that was the only way that I could get away with telling the story. And you'll note that I covered my butt from a time travel perspective, is how nobody could see him, but Jesus saw him. Well, he
Yeah.
was outside of time. So I wanted to make sure to address that before any critics were like, hey, bro, how come nobody can see him? He's walking right there. So
Mhm.
I had to put him outside of time, but you ain't escaping Jesus, though. So I made sure that at the Mount of Olives, he was hiding behind a tree. He
Yeah.
was trying his best to hide behind that. I manually composited, by the way. I show proof of that, of my work in there. Yeah, Jesus turns and looks at him, and says, "I see you." you know,
Mhm.
that was meant to be, and I think I timed the music with that too, to where it would hit hard. Like you're not expecting
It did.
Jesus to look dead at him with glowing eyes, and
Yeah.
I see you. That was all
I
my
love it.
imagination.
I love it. I love
Yeah,
it. Wow. Man,
yeah,
Jason, this is so fun. I love you, man. Okay. So what is your vision for the rest of the channel going forward from
yeah.
here?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. That's a really good question, actually. And it was something that I'd been thinking about, that's been on my mind a lot lately. it's going to be a two-lane channel, right? It can be referred to as, and because I love doing immersive cinematic style long form content, like and telling of a story, like the Flannan Isles, right? I
Mhm.
want to take you and I want to immerse you and make you feel like that you're like literally there. You know, whether it was that buoy bell that clanged a couple times, right? And the musical score that's playing as I'm giving the background context on these guys leading up to what's happening. Yeah, I love a good story. I want to continue that. I also like the 3 on camera format that's what we started with. That's what I did all throughout the Little Season series. Less VFX heavy work, little to no AI usage. Yeah, get back to my roots with that. And whether that's me going down, you know, a Tartarian rabbit hole of some sort, or giants that lived in Catalina Island off of San Diego or something at one point, you know,
I
whatever the
love it.
story.
I love that.
Yeah, so it's to be a two-lane thing. So I still want to do long form, cinematic, immersive type stories. I also want to retain, you know, the format and everything that we've had going forward. I also want to do more like family friendly, where the whole family will always be a family friendly channel. That has
Mhm.
been my one thing from the start. I do not curse on any of the videos that I make. When I did the Enochian magic and UFO one, you know, I'm not going to say these demonic sigils out loud. If it's something that makes me, before I get into, I'll be like, first and foremost, Jesus Christ is our Lord and Savior. I so it's always kind of been a family friendly thing. So, you know, but I'm looking at maybe like, you know, there's like this super Bible book like series that's out, and there's the live action Bible, and I kind of had did the Tribe of Dan as a live action comic. I wanted to try animation that way, and I did that.
Yeah, that's
So I'm
right.
thinking
You
about
did.
maybe
That's
creating a
right.
series.
Yeah, I watched that. I
Mm.
forgot you did that. That was good. I like that Tribe of Dan one you did.
Yeah, I was my
Mm.
first, you know, if you look at all these videos, you know, like I'll do a proof of concept, right? I
Mhm.
like to try a proof of concept first. So I take an engineering approach at everything that I do. If I can demonstrate a proof of concept, then I'll execute it, you know, fully in the follow-on video, you know. And in that follow-on video, I may introduce, at least to my own self, another proof of concept idea that I will then carry out, you know, and execute on the next video. And so I build upon each one, you know, because if I do it successfully, then I can always return to that format because I've shown to myself that I can do it, and I can do it, at least in my own eyes, successfully, you know, and I can pull that skill out later on. There's yeah, a few ways, but I do want to put Humanly Curious on a trajectory that folks are going to know what they're going to get. You may get like a Flannan Isles where I do a long form, but then I'll return back to, you know, like I don't want to reveal what I'm working on right now. It's current events. It's going to deal with current events, and it's going to kind of deal with uh co-opting of Christianity and churches today. What's kind of going on and how it stems back to the 1980s. Even the particular person I'm going to be talking about in my next, it's going to be very different. It's not Flannan Isles, you know, or nothing, and it's not Little Season either. Little Season though, I will be returning to because there's so much there, and I
Yeah,
happen to
and
have
all the deception and lies, it all comes back to the Little Season. Everything is pure symbolism.
It does, man. When you think about it, you can always boil it down. You really can. And my thing is that it's like, unless it's like overt Little Season, I will mention that, but I won't shoehorn Little Season into anything neither. You know,
Sure.
if it stands on its own,
It
right, as
does.
it is, sure, someone could make Little Season connections. People do in my videos all the time on stuff that I feel is unrelated to Little Season. I get comments all the time, you know, about that. But yeah, if the overarching theme's not Little Season, right, then I won't do that because I don't. Yeah, I don't want anyone to ever think that, you know, oh well, he's just shoehorning Little Season and to ride the coattail, you know, whatever. No, that's not me. And remember, integrity is my number one virtue. But I happen to have a character who has a time machine, man, and he's a Christian now, right? And there's the
Right.
quadrivium that was the college level of Greek teaching. So yeah, so stay tuned. You know, he'll because there's plenty. more to go back to that, if I've covered it in the trivium, it will not be covered in the next one I do. You know what I mean? If he goes back in time again as a Christian now through Christian eyes, I'm going to put him in times to witness other things. He's going to want to now piece the little season together. So I'll probably, do something like that again. But
Yeah,
I got plenty
timeline
of
type
ideas.
stuff.
And yeah,
Timeline
humanly
stuff is
curious is
interesting.
here, and our foot is on the gas pedal, man.
Right. Yeah, I love you. You have a unique niche sort of here in the community that you're,
Yeah.
there's not any other YouTube channels like yours. And I love also that you've got a meetup coming up at the
Yep.
end of next month or this month.
End of this month at Deer Park in Mesa, Arizona, and we'll be there from noon until 3 p.m. And we've
Okay.
gotten, I think, at least 8 or 9 now that have RSVP that they'll be there for sure.
I
Yeah.
love that. I'm
Yeah.
all about meetups. In fact, I think God gave me a vision that
Mm.
we're to come together and meet
Yeah.
physically in person. The interwebs, man, it
Yeah.
gets toxic out here.
Yeah, it does.
Personal fellowship, meetups, the church
Yes.
coming together with no agendas. Here's what the Spirit says for us today: humble yourself like a child and
Yeah.
cry out to Him for the power of the Holy Spirit, and do it together with
Yeah.
no agendas.
Amen.
And love one
Yeah.
another.
Yeah.
Man,
No
keep your
judgment, man.
keep your convictions between yourself and God,
Yeah.
and love one another, and let's
Yeah.
cry out to Him for the power of the Spirit. And it's like
Amen.
simple. Little children can understand that. This is what
Yes.
the Spirit says today to
Yes.
all of us.
Absolutely. It does. It does, man. Yeah, no judgment. My faith I wear on my sleeve. I've shared not only my testimony in the podcast that I did with JJ, I put my baptism in there. And I'd never been baptized before. And in 2024, in April 2024, in my backyard in the pool, my pastor, who's a small church in his house, Deliverance, he's a deliverance pastor, but he's great. And he came in and I did my baptism and I loved it. It felt great. But yeah, it's like what you see is what you get, man.
A real dude.
I have my own life's experiences, man. We all do. I've had to defend myself on more than some comments that, hey, I'm on my own walk with the Lord. Whether I was defending, these are just guitars, folks. And you can see me playing them. If you HC Studios, you'll see me playing them. Pink Floyd, right? It's sure secular music, right? And we're all on our own walk.
It's
They
a Pharisee
influenced me
filter.
heavily. Stanley Kubrick, right? 2001 Space Odyssey. They influenced me heavily. Were these people whatever, right? Maybe so. But God he can use good, he can use evil for his own good purposes.
That's right.
And if Pink Floyd was used to inspire me to where my plan is to do what I'm doing now that could possibly lead people to Jesus Christ, and leading people to Jesus, I feel as Christians on this earth is probably the biggest thing that we can do that glorifies God. That's my opinion. I'm sure there's many other things, but when you lead someone to, in their heart, convict and accept Jesus as their Lord and Savior, and they walk with Jesus now, come on, man. I don't know. That's pretty powerful, bro.
Yeah, man. That's right.
And so, hey, it is what it is. Had I not listened to them or whatever, could I've come up with Wells and taken him on the trilogy that I did? And you know what? If I encourage anyone to go through the comments on there, and you'll find more than one that I've reignited someone's faith and brought them back closer to the Lord after having watched that. Those comments stick with me because that to me is mission accomplished. So yeah,
Man,
right on, brother.
I love you. Yeah, both in the description and in the comments. I'll pin the comments. He's got 2 channels. One that's his regular Humanly Curious channel, and the other one is the HC Studios.
Yeah,
where you're doing the music. I love
correct.
you, man. Any final words?
No, I just want to say thank you, man. This has been my actual first podcast as a guest. I'd done a podcast with JJ that I hosted. I have no idea what I'm doing. You're good at what you do. And I winged it, man. Like, we just luckily JJ's a good talker, so I didn't really have to do much.
You're a natural. You're natural. You're good at
Thanks,
it, man.
Thanks. Yeah. So this is, Grady has done the first interview of Humanly Curious, and I want to thank you, man. I'm grateful that we were able to connect up, man. There's nobody else that I would have rather sat down with for my first interview, man, than you. So I appreciate it. Stay tuned, folks. Humanly Curious. We're gonna go places. So thank you all for subscribe to me and for watching our content. I appreciate you.
He is a man on a mission. Jason, I love you so much and can't wait to do this again. We'll be following what you're doing. Keep working hard. It's like you have a vision and a calling. You know what you're doing and what you're supposed to do, and you just kind of stick with it and keep it up. Keep going. Love you, man.
Hey, love